It's LIN live with Spank and Sam. It's a show for everyone, boy, woman, girl, and man. So tune in on Facebook and YouTube. Guaranteed to make you laugh and make you feel good. Yeah, it's the LIN live show with Spank and Sam. It's the LIN live show with Spank and Sam. It's the LIN live show with Spank and Sam. It's the LIN live show with Spank and Sam.
Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, children of all ages, we would like to welcome you to episode 5 of LIN Live. One,
Fifth.
2, 3, 4, fifth.
Fifth. Yeah.
Yeah, dude. If you're gonna say fifth, you gotta do the 4.
I'm sorry.
On
Like,
the
bro,
fifth
man,
floor.
from the fifth floor.
We are so excited to be joining you guys on this 5th episode and in the midst of an apostolic summit for LIN. So we are working hard for
Yeah.
the money. So
Yes.
hard for the money.
Yes.
We work hard for the money. So you better treat us right.
Amen. That'll preach.
Oh man. So Sam, how was church today, sir?
Church was great. I attended multiple services today because I am at home like everybody else is. So I attend 301 churches every Sunday. Joke.
Bad part is I don't even like not believe you. I totally believe everything you're saying right now. Like,
You know, technically, if you're like scrolling through Facebook, you may like click a video. You're like, oh, I didn't mean to go on that live. So then you're in that church's service, and then you go to your church's services. So
yeah, I mean, as long as you're not doing pity clicks where he's like, oh, they only got 2 people in their church service. Let me just go on here for a second and
well, sometimes
no, it's only 3 people. It's
give
like
them a
when you
couple
walk
hearts
in
and then leave out.
right, everybody see you walk in, they just like, oh, like how you see me on virtual? How you gonna see me? Like it's virtual. But no, cool. Yeah, and then your weekend was good. Like my weekend was actually pretty incredible, but I ain't gonna talk about it. Yes, I am. Go ahead, Sam.
My weekend was solid. What happened this weekend? Yesterday we had the free COVID testing event at Liberty Temple, Chicago.
Are you COVID free?
I am COVID free.
I'm COVID free.
Yeah, COVID free, baby. 2020, you feel me? And beyond.
Hashtag.
So that was solid. And then I just came home and relaxed. Didn't do much today. Went to Sunday school, went to service, took a nap, went to another service, and now I'm here.
Then I went to another service. Then I went to another service, and I was like,
It's like Liberty in 2000. I went to 30 services today, and it was just Sunday.
Yeah, no, my weekend was cool. I had my first indoor wedding for the season. It was so much plexiglass everywhere. Like I was in a glass cage of emotion. And then like the horn players had a plexiglass shield between. It was so much like COVID safety for this wedding, but it was cool. Like I felt safe.
So
And then so like that was the end of my day yesterday because I had to go to the COVID testing set up for you guys.
Yeah.
And then I had a video shoot with one of the bands I play with, Left Jones. Shouts out. And then had a very important phone call with you guys for the LIN stuff, and then off to the wedding. So and then that went until about 1 a.m. and then had to be up at 8 a.m. for Sunday school and stuff and services. And then here I am with you guys. So I am so not tired at all. I am energized. Jaquaqua, what's up, bro? You've been on multiple services today too.
Jaquay might go to 301 churches though, for real. I'm just saying.
Apostle Lex Waddell, we're so jazzed that you're with us today, Johnny. But with that, we kind of just did the church check-in. Like, I don't even want to I don't even want to extend this out even further, bro. Like, I feel like we should just really get into this topic tonight, just because like I know the people that we have with us tonight are supercharged, like they stay charged, like batteries. I don't know. I'm tired.
Yeah, or I don't know what stays charged. Somebody in the comments put something that stays charged.
Eugenia, I'm gonna need you to hold your horses, all of the horses. You need to go find your mama. I love the video. That's hilarious. We're gonna have Eugenia and Derry on the show to hash out their beef that they've been having. So we're looking for that day, and then we're gonna bring on Fred and Jaquay and have them hash out their convocation beefs. We're gonna squash beefs in 2020 before the year is out. That's the plan.
That's what we're here for.
But without further ado, ladies and gentlemen, let's get into our topic tonight: church hurt. Welcome to the show, Antonio Perez and Pastor Teresa Alisson.
Hey.
We are so excited to have you guys here tonight, like for real.
Thanks for having me. I'm excited. I'm super excited.
Same.
So before we get into it, we want you guys to kind of tell us about yourselves. Give us a little bit of your history. So, we know. Tony, I'm just go ahead and start with you.
Of course, I'm a libertarian since just about birth. We came to Liberty when I was 1 year old. So, I've known Spank my whole life. Went to kindergarten with his sister. I mean, at Liberty.
Yeah.
At Liberty.
At Liberty. Liberty Academy.
His whole life, basically. So, and we moved to Florida for what year? 04 to help build the license. Look at
Jaquay.
Now we moved to Florida in 04 to help build the Orlando church. And I recently relocated back up here to Wisconsin, to Green Bay, Wisconsin, where there's nothing out here. I'm just patiently waiting for Liberty to, start a church in Wisconsin. Somebody. All
right, man. You within commute distance, bro. You can still commute to the Chicago or the Zion church.
I was just thinking that yesterday. Like, hey, we got to link up, one of these times, and But anyway,
we'll beat you at the border.
But yeah, that's it. I'm a libertarian from birth, and we still going strong. We don't die, we multiply. Y'all already know.
Hey, baby's kids. Cool. Now we move on to the lovely Teresa Alisson.
Hey. So I think my family came to Liberty when I was 7, I think. And my parents were ordained at Liberty as pastors, planted their own church, 88, 89. And so I've been forced to go to church since I was 7 years old. Along the line, I developed my own relationship with God, but I was a member of and served faithfully at my parents' church, Hope of Glory. My father went to heaven in December of 2010, and so my mom's been serving there as a senior pastor since then. And I served faithfully under her until January 2018, when I joined All Nations Worship Assembly. So Apostle Matthew Stevenson is currently my pastor and my leader, and I'm one of the executive pastors there. So I am a church girl through and through. That's who I am. I love God's house. I love the local church. I am one of those people that believe it's possible to have a sustainable relationship with God outside of the local church. I just don't think it makes sense. So it's my spiel.
That was like professional spiel. Like, man.
Do you have that written out? And if so, can you send it to us?
Put that in my notes. I need to make me a spiel. But no. So we invited you guys here because we feel like you two are very, very qualified to talk about our topic tonight. Because I'm pretty sure we've all gone through some type of church hurt, and we've, you know, the good thing is like we're not living in that church hurt. We've overcome. We have overcome. Sorry, I'm music. So let's get into it. Why do you feel church hurt is such a prevalent thing in the church? Whoever shall.
Well, I just want to clarify one thing. Like I said, Liberty, because I don't really count the church we went to before. No shade, Mom, if you're listening. But the church my mom went to before Liberty, I don't really count that as a part of my my personal authentic church experience in terms of memories of real encounters with the Lord and such like that. But my disclaimer is All Nations is only my third church. And in the three churches that I've been to, I personally have never experienced any definition of church hurt. I think that's the first thing, is that there's so many definitions of church hurt out there. What hurt means to one person may not mean the same to the other. And so I think in some, it's so prevalent because everybody's entitled to their own individual experiences. And so for some people, what church hurt really is that church people hurt me. And other people have been hurt by the system of church. So I think anytime somebody uses that label generically, oh, church hurt, I got church hurt. If I am graced, or if I have the energy to disciple them through that process, I'm always going to start with define that. What does that even mean? Because I think that's one of the things that cheapens the experience, is how generically that label is attached to everything. If sister so-and-so offended you, and that is your first time being hurt or offended in church, that is not an appropriate way to say you are experiencing church hurt. A human being offended another human being. That's just life hurt, right? But I think because the expectations for what happens in the parameters or in church space are so high, rightfully so, people should feel safe coming into the house of God. I think generically, anytime there's offense connected to a church person, a church setting, or a church system, that label is applied. So I think it's prevalent because of misapplication of the title. Doesn't make it any less real, but I think some of what is being labeled church hurt really isn't church hurt at all.
I totally agree. And that's what we want to do here tonight, is clarify that statement. Because, you know, if you get offended at work, you don't call it work hurt. If you get offended at home, you don't call it home hurt. You know, so like, let's clarify what church hurt really is. Tony, what about you? What do you feel?
I agree that it has been the narrative of every experience, every bad experience with people who go to church is labeled as church hurt. I think it's bigger than that. And just as any, you know, people who are oppressed by a system, we can't say that I've had an experience, we ran into an officer, now, you know, you claim that you share the same burden as someone who just did 15 years for an ounce of weed because you had a bad experience for a traffic ticket where you got disrespected. Even though it's a part of the whole, it's not, we can't label, we have to define, you know, when someone is being oppressed by the system versus when someone had a bad experience with an individual. You know, so that's a perfect example of, you know, us bringing clarity and context to what church hurt is. And I believe that this stems from really the people who have genuine or authentic church hurt, that when they express this pain, now you have bandwagon, you know, people who, like anything in life, you got the peanut gallery who come in, who add fuel and air to the fire, and now it's turned into a living thing, you know. So I think that we have to give it, bring clarity to what it is, where it comes from, and who are being affected, who are really being affected by this, you know.
Are you saying people do a church Me Too movement with church hurt? Is that what you're saying?
Very real.
Yeah.
Real. But legitimately, because let's talk about that, because there is this thing about they didn't do nothing to me, so I'm not attaching myself to that, right? So you've got that. Absolutely. To Tony's point, some of these experiences are not even mine, but I'm going to be a bandwagoner, right? But the flip side of that coin is, if I've observed a raggedy character, if I've observed, like, you don't have to hurt me for me to distance myself. I just can't say that you hurt me. You know what I mean? I can't say that you hurt me if you haven't hurt me, but I absolutely can take notes and make decisions about if I exit that situation, or if I take myself out of the proximity to potentially experience that again. But like this bandwagon, you know how close I have to be to somebody for me to accept their hurt is mine? You know, I'm gonna narrow it down. Like, I've got some people that I grew up with at, you know, all of the churches I've been through, but I'm gonna say, to be safe, if you don't share my last name, I'm just not going to walk around and attach myself to your hurt without, you know, having experienced it myself. So I think that bandwagon thing is super, super, super important to acknowledge, because a lot of the things that we're wounded about have nothing to do with us at all.
Facts. And then, like, there's so many people in a church that just need to feel important, that they look to something to just latch onto to feel that. So it's like, oh man, that happened to you. Oh, something got to be done about it. They come, you know, Captain Save Us ain't, you know, like, nah, it's not. You know,
I think it's rooted in the rejected. You know, I think we all have had times in our lives where we were in a space of feeling rejected, and we sort of linked up with the rejected, you know, and what comes from that isn't really, you know, healthy. You know, you just have a lot of noise and no real solution. So I think they're rejected. So there needs to be, you know, just someone who could cross the aisle, if I could say, for a better term, to cross the aisle and, you know, understand both sides. And even the bandwagoners have a, you know, they have value. If I could use value, you know, they have value to the conversation. And because we want to bring healing, you know, bottom line to, you know, to the overall topic. You know?
Yeah, I think one of the things we have to do first is figure out what type of hurt it is. Like Pastor Teresa said, so you need to establish, was it a hurt from a person? And then go through why did they hurt you, and then you work people through that, or was it hurt from the church's system, and then go through that process as well. And I think when we start thinking that way, it will help us help others the same way someone else helped us.
So I see that we've already broken it down into two different types of categories now. So we got, you know, personal hurt, and then we got systemic hurt. So what are examples of like systemic hurt that we can like put out there right now for people?
So even before we hop into that, I think it's important to identify that in either case, any type of hurt is the result of an expectation not being met. So I think, like, even understanding that conceptually, whether or not the person or the system you had this expectation of even knew that was your expectation, like disappointment and hurt comes on the back of an expectation not being met, or like you did something that I would never expect you to do. So I think systemic hurt would be things like I was about to get evicted and the church didn't help me, or you know, they don't have a policy that pays my rent, for example. Another could be, and this one kind of feels like individual personal stuff, but it could feel really systemic, is when we want to be a part of certain groups, or we want to be acknowledged or recognized by certain groups. There's this whole thing, this conversation in my church about finding your tribe. And what I've learned and observed is that some people don't want to find their tribe; they want to pick their tribe. And so that need or that desire to attach ourselves to specific groups of people, to specific bodies of people. And all the time, it's not just for, you know, fame or to be known. It's really like legit. I see in that group of people something that I could really benefit from. But when we're not accepted, that goes to that rejection that Tony was talking about. Like, that's a very real thing. So systems that where rules or where people sit, oh my God, you would be amazed how many people bounce around from church to church because of how the seating is laid out. I'll be very honest with you. Even coming to my church that is larger than any church I've been to, you know, historically, and you guys know how small my parents' church was. So this conversation about standing in line to get into church, that's a very humbling experience for a lot of people. And so some people feel like people who have to stand in line are disregarded. They're treated as less than, not understanding systems, protocol, authority. People don't understand that. They're very focused on their individual circumstance. So something like a seating chart can lead to people feeling like they've been hurt by a system in the church.
And I've stood in that line, and then like I've heard the murmurings of people. Is like, why they get to go in front? Why they get to do this? It's like, you don't even know who the leaders are here. So why are you leaving like that? Ain't even your place to speak on. What about you, Tony? What are some examples of systemic?
Like she say, you know, what sitting. I know growing up at Liberty, I remember, you know, you have this side of the church, you have people who live in suburbs. That's it way over here. And then you have this side of people who live in Inglewood. That's it way over here. So, you know, the reason why this subject is like, I'm passionate about it because my mother, Patricia Perez, always crossed the aisle. You know, she mothered people who had money and people who had nothing. You know, if the Perez's were 1 week over spending the night over in Country Club Hills, but then next Sunday we're spending the night over somebody else's house over down the street on Oakley. You know, so this is why it's such a passion for me, because it's these cliques that really, and like Teresa gave clarity, she said you have groups, but then you could sometimes have cliques. And sometimes we have to be, as leaders, we have to be able to see what's going on, just like your family. And sometimes the leaders can't see everything. You know, I don't know if you guys grew up in a big family, but when things happen, you blame the parents.
Sure.
You know, my brother or sister did this to me while I was growing up, and my parents weren't there to protect me. So I initially am going to blame my parents. You know, so I see this in a church where the parents get blamed for what the kids do. You know,
that's so good.
Yeah, and rightfully so, because we still have to. I've prepared my heart for a long time to prepare myself for a conversation that I'm going to have with my kids about where I dropped the ball at. You know, and I have to own it, and I have to give them a reason, and then after that, I'll have to teach them how to overcome this trauma. You know, I'm not going to dismiss it and say I didn't do it to you, or I was, you know, and you know, give and not give an ear to something that happened under my watch. You know, so I think that it's just like a family. You know, that, you know, when something happens to, you know, you tend to blame, you know, the parents or the one who's responsible for you, you know, that for the hurt that happened to you. You know, so I think that even people who experience church hurt, that they can that they understand, because it's different than you growing in a house with 5 people versus you going to a church with 2,000. And sometimes, you know, the kids do stuff that the parents did not approve of. They doing stuff in the name of the parents. If you got brothers and sisters, mom said, give me $20. And you know, that's only $20. And they eating cakes in front of you, and your mama get home and she ain't tell them.
Dude, that's the story of a lot of churches where it's like, man, the pastor said do this, or apostle said do this, and it's like, they don't even know. You know what I'm saying?
I have no clue. They don't, you know, so, you know, we have to, and they're just, you know, bring clarity to what happened to you. You know, because, you know, we also, I think it's levels. I think it's levels to church hurt, like there's levels to everything, you know, and the system is big, just like the government, just like, you know, we go to school or the workplace. I've experienced the same, you know, as I grew up, I've experienced the same hurt in work, at school, that I experienced in church. It's all the same, you know. You know,
But you didn't leave your job though.
I did not lose my job. So, you know, but we gotta also understand that there's different expectations for
church,
job and school, and you know, when I'm at work, I don't, you know, these are employees. They don't proclaim themselves to be followers of Christ or apostles and teachers and prophets. They're not, you know. So when we declare ourselves something, there has to follow evidence of that, which is, you know, Christ-like, to be Christ-like. So that the expectation is different when it comes to. So that's why the outrage is different. You know, plus you there, you know, we our value system, we get paid at work. You know, so there's a you talk about being homeless, and so we're more inclined to be, you know, influenced by what we can see, you know. So I'm not gonna be homeless, so I'm gonna fight through this. But it's the same principle with our spirituality. It's just as important, but you know, the expectations are different. But that's just my take on the click side of it. But like any institution, it's the same thing, you know, as far as the abuse and the people that fall through the cracks. Let's put it that way, because even the schooling system, you got people that fall through the cracks. So I think people fall through the cracks, especially when it's large. Like when you have, like now during this quarantine, you can see everybody. You could touch everybody. You could, well, put a mask on. No, but you could, it's hands on, because you only got 10, 15 people in front of you. But when you're in an organization with 1,000, 2,000, 3,000 people, people fall through the cracks. Yeah. So I think that there can be a system to catch those people, you know, in place, because you're not going to catch everybody.
Right.
You know, but at least I believe that God honors effort. And I think that we could show more effort at catching those who fall through the cracks, you know.
So then that brings this question. Is it the sole responsibility of that leader of the house to catch those people? Or is it the people that's under that leader that leader is shepherding, that is, you know, charged to handle the people? Like, I always kind of like look at the church as like a shepherd and sheepdogs, where you have a shepherd that is leading the entire flock, but you have sheepdogs that keep the sheep in line and in place. So it's like, if that sheepdog's not doing his job, then the sheep can go astray. So it's just like, whose responsibility is it to catch those people in the church?
It's definitely not the head person's responsibility to catch them. It's the head person's responsibility to catch their front line. A perfect example is, I'll use an easy example. Many church people are just mean, period.
Facts.
Just mean and nasty, right? So you have the one elder who's nasty, and I'm observing that everybody bypasses her and they want to deal with another one. But then if I've got 5 or 6 elders who are mean and nasty, as the leader, I have a problem. I owe the lay members an apology. I think a lot of that is part of the problem too. Like this desire for direct contact with the leader when it hasn't been proven to be necessary. So again, a lot of times people want to go straight to the leader because the people that the leader has in place are just mean or difficult or unavailable or not responsive. I think more times than not, that's the case versus people just wanting FaceTime with the leader. Right. But I feel like if the leader has, even in my roles in corporate America, as director or whatever the case may be, the client It's not my responsibility. But if I build up my leadership strong enough, I'm focusing on my leaders, then my leaders can focus on the client. Because if I'm focusing on the client and my leaders are focusing on the client, then who's focusing on my leaders? Who's making sure that they're built up, that they're being pastored, making sure that their attitudes are in check. So when things are flowing well, people don't even have this tremendous need or desire for the leader to address everything. So the health of the church is the leader's responsibility, but the legwork is not. And I feel like managing people out of and through offense is not the leader's job.
I totally agree. And I feel like a lot of that comes from people who start out in small churches and have that small church mentality, and they bring it to a big church. So they they have small church expectations in a large church. So they expect, like, if you're in a small church that have a membership of about 50 people, then that leader knows every single person in that church. They know what's going on with you. They know sister so-and-so who sprained her ankle the other day. You know what I'm saying? They know that personally because you were able to call that leader. But like when you're in a mega church, there's a protocol of people that you have to go through. And a lot of times, like you said, the ball gets dropped in the midst of that protocol.
Or even if you're not going from, like, if you're not changing churches, let's talk about a growing church, right? Mm-hmm. If I'm a pastor and it's me and my family, and that is our membership base, right? But over time, things grow. Your perfect example of what you said. As the leader, I can go see everybody in the hospital. I know everybody's grandkids. I can pay bills for people because we're super small. Let's just say it's turning into an apostolic work now, where we're growing and now I've got other people in place. It's impossible for me to further the vision, to do the things that God is having me to do, to plant other churches or plant other works or expand and still keep up with whose grandmother is in the hospital. So yes, that's an unrealistic expectation, but at the end of the day, it is somebody's responsibility to make sure that people land well. To Tony's point earlier, I can't stress enough, the expectation is very different in church. Not only should church be a safe place, and yeah, some people take it too far, but also church is voluntary. Even though it's where we get replenished and we get restored and all these amazing things we get from the local church, there isn't a benefit that people feel like they can go and take and apply and improve their home situation the very next day, unless they're spiritually minded, unless they've grown up in word churches and they know the real power of the local church that God is flowing through. We're talking about just regular church goers. Church should be easy. I should not have to fast and pray and gear myself up to walk into the house of God. I should not have to brace myself for what usher is going to be on the door today so that I don't go off. And that's a very real thing. Very real. People are stressed before they walk into church. That ain't okay. Again, if it's one usher, one elder, one greeter, I get it. But like, I'm legit in my car, I'm counting to 5 before I walk into the house of God because of how things are flowing in there. And then there's nobody to legitimize my experience or the other people who share the same experience. There's no reporting structure. There's nobody asking, how are we doing? How are you feeling? When you walk in here, how was your experience? First time visitor, 10-year member, how's your experience? Do you still feel the same warm and fuzzy that you did before? We are so afraid to ask people how their experiences are in church space. So afraid to do that temperature check to gauge if people still feel the same love that drew them into the space. Do they still feel that 2-3 years later? And a simple, how has your experience been lately, will stop a lot of this church hurt stuff, because we can get ahead of the problems. But there's no protocol. There are few systems that say, if you have X amount of negative experiences with leadership, this is how you report it. There's none of that. Instead, when people report it, they're labeled gossipers, backbiters, rebellious. They got one foot in the world, when all they simply want to do, most people who join the church, they join because they love it. Because the first time they walked in the door, they felt God and they felt something they never felt before. But there's nobody checking the temperature when that feeling starts to ooze away. And so before you know it, you got this mass exodus. Folks that left your church, planted another one, or went somewhere else, and nobody even knows why. That's crazy to me. Sorry.
Yeah. Chanel just said it in the comments, what I was just thinking. A lot of church hurt, I believe, can be avoided by just the truth. You can avoid a lot of things by telling the truth. Church saying, tell the truth, shame the devil. But we don't want to tell the truth, though, because it's too real. Yeah. And I think sometimes leadership and the people or even the members are too afraid to tell the truth because of, like you said, it can bring off negative connotations to the people that are telling the truth, or the leadership has to look at themselves and say, I'm not doing the right job. So they may be gifted, but they don't have character, as Apostle Turner used to say all the time. And I think that is something that we are, or the church has been experiencing for years.
I just want to tap into something in the comments too. Like we're not saying size doesn't matter of the church. We're just or size matters. We're just saying these are aspects that have caused people's interpretation of church hurt. So like we're gonna get there. So all you that's disagreeing with me that size doesn't, I got you. We're gonna get there.
Size thing, I know my point was that you could see everybody with a minimal amount of people when it grows. And this is with even corporate America, because I've worked for companies that they are growing way too fast than what they have to, handle the supply.
Yep.
As far as the workers go. So now there's another aspect of it. Those who are in leadership are overworked because we're just ignorant to processes, so because I'm currently working for a company that's growing way too fast than the workers that we can supply. So now you're getting injuries left and right, and now you're getting a whole bunch of stuff that they could have avoided if they just had a training department. That seems basic to me. You don't have a training department and you're making $60 billion a year. So you're trying to save $1 million to now you're about to lose 500. You know what I'm saying? So this is the thing that we have in church in general across the board, whether it's the Black community, the white, Hispanic, is that we are ignorant, and because we're so separate world from church, that's been taken way out of context. No, you need somebody when this thing start growing too fast. You need somebody to come up here and tell how to get things in order. We talk about order so much that it's really not orderly, so that we need help, from the world and some aspects of, building an institution, because the church is an institution, where people can come and eat and drink and fellowship and love one another and grow. And it is a cornerstone. Where can we go? I'm going to 79th Street. It is an institution. So the thing is that many times the growth is too fast than what, than the leadership, than the quality of leadership that we can provide for the flock. So now you're just throwing people into positions that they have absolutely no training. I mean, because
they're faithful.
But they have perfect attendance, so even in the workplace, we've all been through this where, you see some people that are supervisors, you see some people that are whatever managers, and you're like, wow, their turnaround rate wouldn't be 75% if this person wasn't. That's just basic. I'm talking about worldly principles on building a company. So, and this should be applied to the church, and I personally, believe that some of this stuff is, as far as your morale go, it should be visible and evident where you can see these things, because what do we have the Holy Ghost for? That's just, I think that's been my issue is, we talk about the Holy Spirit, but some things I believe he lets us know right away. You ask him, like, show me my sin, and immediate, you really want him to show you when your next come up is, but he's showing you showing you what you need to repent for.
Exactly.
I think that these things he show us right away. So, I think sometimes it's willful. That because we don't want to be confrontational, like you say, we want to avoid what's really going on. It's like the family, right? What's going on, but you don't want to address it right now because it's too much, So now this person is continuing to be abused because the family want to keep family secrets, and family secrets destroy families. I hate family secrets.
So you're saying like there's a difference between a safe space and sheltering, because like in that creating a safe space, they often mistake it, sheltering as a safe space, even though they're trying to protect you from all of these bad things, but they're also protecting you from experiences that you need to experience to grow you. You know what I'm saying? So like that's what like I feel like a lot of churches get into. I'm creating a safe space by sheltering my flock from all of these things, so they don't talk about the things.
Right. They're protecting you from the world, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so here's with me. I grew up thinking that the rapture was going to come, so I never prepared for life because it was talked about so much. So I was like, I turned 25 and like, why am I still here? And this was a real issue. I didn't prepare after 30, or I didn't prepare after 19 because I thought that the rapture was going to come. So that's a fact.
That's a real thing.
So there was no balance to that. So I wasn't prepared to go to get a job, or I wasn't prepared to plan for a career, or it was always church. So yes, we were protected from the world, and in the result of that is when you go out into the world, you are extremely unprepared for what you walk into. Extremely unprepared for what. This is not everybody's testimony, but I'm sharing my testimony as far as my experience is, that we're protecting, the flock from what we need. Like that experience, that first job. You need to experience that first job. It's going to help you when you become a leader in the church.
Facts.
I could tell when somebody have never had a leadership job at work, when they're leading the church, like, yeah, you need that experience, so, and sometimes we learn that in the church as well. And it prepares us for when we go out to the world, vice versa.
Pastor T, I see you've been over there just like itching. You got so much. You're full.
No, this is so good. This conversation about the parts of church experience that should function and flow like a business. So even the conversation about truth, right? Let's talk about that. I feel like every parishioner is entitled to truth, but every parishioner is not entitled to an explanation. So just being honest about what we're really looking for. There are some things that you should be told are happening, are not happening. We are changing X, Y, Z. But in any business, and in part to what Tony's saying, there's some of us who don't have enough real life experiences to understand that what you're wanting and what you're asking for is not the reality anywhere in real space. No CEO is there. The most they're going to tell you is, I'm so sorry. We really like to keep all of you, but we've got to make drastic cuts. We'll be laying off 250 people. Mm-hmm. If you've got a compassionate CEO, if there is no potential for scandal or PR nightmare involved, you may get a little bit of reasoning why. But as a member, you're not entitled to explanations about what happens behind closed doors or what is happening to keep the lights on. Again, if there's something unethical or something illegal, that's not what I'm talking about. But there's some folks who feel like, I'm a part of this ministry, and what you're calling a clique is really staff. That's staff. They have information, they've got business they've got to take care of, and because you don't know every play-by-play, you feel like you're being isolated. Well, that's not real life. Where have you ever worked where you get access to just anything in the world you want to know? And so the other part of like real life experiences is how church handles promotion, right? And again, these are things that lead to church hurt. I'm faithful. I have a certain set of skills. I'm not doing anything to be seen, but I serve as I can. And it's not that I'm seeking promotion, but I'm seeking the Lord. God, show me where my gift can be used here. But the person who's been around 15, 20 years, they're getting the nod and they're being put in these positions. Like, we've got to stop rewarding faithfulness with promotion, right? And that's where the conversation of training comes into play. If you see that you're growing, especially if you're the leader, the Lord is giving you vision, 5 years from now, this is where we're going to be. Start training, exposing people right then to things that they may need to lead, or systems or groups that they may need to lead down the line. So instead, somebody dies. This is what happens. Somebody dies or somebody falls out And now whosoever will, let them come. Whoever is next in line. What is that? What is next in line? What does that even look like? If we put the seriousness back in this thing, now we talk about, church is a safe place and all of that, but people's very lives are at stake with what happens in church space. So if we put the focus back on that, all this willy-nilly political gain, I don't know what else to do with her, so I'm gonna just give her a title. We gotta cut that out because people are watching, and what may not be church hurt initially is absolutely a discrediting of the church for sure. Y'all don't even know how to put people in leadership. So now what wasn't church hurt is the baby seed of that is now giving a side eye. I don't even know if I trust you now. That opens up the door for me to now every interaction, everything that happens before me. Now I'm looking at it crazy because you've demonstrated to me you don't even know how to pick leaders. And so again, there are some people who aren't qualified to make those assessments. I'm not talking about them, but I'm talking about folks who hear God as well. I'm talking about people who have experience and exposure to structures that actually work, because again, the gospel is freely given and freely poured, but back office church is business. And so the marriage of the two is going to create this sacred, safe place that is what? The S word that church does not like to talk about. And that's sustainability. That's sustainability. For some churches, sustainability looks like as time goes on, we've got members that age in place, and we also have the youth. And so some of us are so judgmental, we're beating up on these churches that have no youth. Some churches are there just to maintain. You're going to have some churches that just grow old, and everybody slowly is going to die off. And that's the nature of the thing. But it's for the visionary, the leadership, to understand what is the vision for this house? What is the direction of this church? You can't tell me that God is surprised when there's mass exoduses from churches, or when there's all this turnover and you've got like this gap. You got little bitty kids and then you've got 50 something. You can't tell me that nobody saw that coming. Then what are we all doing here? What are we all doing? And sometimes offense comes on the back of, I can't even find a place for me. There's no programming here for me. All of the worship songs are geared towards me. Does God not care about my worship experience? Does nobody care? Or if there is something geared towards a particular demographic, is very generic, is very canned. Nobody is before the Lord asking God, give me what I'm supposed to give to my demographic. You don't think that hurts people's feelings? But in businesses, we've got diversity and inclusion committees all around the place. Before George Floyd, they are absolutely certain. I don't want to get my tail sued, so I'm going to figure out what to do with the homosexual, with the Black, the Asian, the man, the woman, the person with a degree, and the person who doesn't have a degree. So if the world is focusing on diversity and inclusion so that they don't hurt and offend the people that work for them, how much so is the burden on the church to be concerned about what diversity and inclusion looks like in the body of Christ, so that people aren't isolated, offended, hurt, and then disconnected? So we got to start looking at parts of church that are business and start treating them as such. And you need qualified people to do that.
And one thing I noticed too is, like, we do update the visions of our churches, but we don't update the training for the vision. So it's like you're still operating off of a training manual from 20, 30 years ago that is no longer viable for the culture of today, for the church of today, or the lifeblood. Like, a lot of our training manuals are based off people who have died off. Now you have a whole new generation of people that think different, that feel different than the people back then. And our culture is definitely.
The why to that is we don't want to copy nobody. I'm gonna do what God told me to do. I'm gonna be original. Anything that's another church is doing, other churches don't want to do it. Nobody. Even when I teach leadership and culture professionally, I tell people you are stone fool as an organization if you're not at least aware of what other businesses that offer your same product are doing. It's not for you to copy. You need to understand the pulse of your industry. That's business 101. What is the pulse of my industry? Because here's the deal. I could be so focused on running this church, running with the vision, keeping up with it, loving on my people, that somewhere I've missed it. And that's okay. I don't even know that God has changed. The wind has changed. God has changed his cadence, and I'm the last to know. That's okay. But you're not going to spot check. You're not going to speak to a conference. You're not going to listen in to a live to at least understand what else God is doing in the earth realm outside of your space.
People don't want to do the legwork, though. That's it.
Yep.
everything is.
diligence.
Yeah, I mean, most things that we need is at hand, and it's free or next to nothing.
That's so
You
true.
know, and we at the church just feel like, okay, the Holy Spirit gonna give it to us. You know, he's just gonna drop it on our lap one Sunday, and it's just gonna all of our issues gonna go away.
I'm running.
and that's just what it is. That's what we've got into instead of realizing corporate America and business has taken kingdom principles and just used them. And they're like, oh, okay, this works. This makes sense. Let's use it.
I think that the why is what is, because I think we could address, so we could give solutions and processes and give direction, and you'll still have people who just won't move forward. And I believe that from a spiritual point of view, because I think the Bible is more practical than what we give it credit for. You know, and I think the real issue is we don't care about certain groups.
Sure.
So if
I almost threw my phone. I was like, wait, I just put a new case on.
Because that's the heart of, see, when you go into, if I'm a supervisor at an organization, it doesn't matter what they care about. They want production. But this is the church, right? This is very different. Production should not be over a person's, condition of their soul. We shouldn't be overlooking an entire generation, entire groups of people, these groups of women, entire groups of women, the entire groups of, of the youth, or even those old in age, because I've seen people who are over 60 leave churches because have a wealth of wisdom. But because they're old, they're not being utilized. And I don't know if any of you have surgery before. When you're stuck in a certain position, even though because I just had surgery on my shoulder, if I'm stuck like this, my elbow stops working. And I can't even bend it over a few days. It literally starts popping as I try to, so I have to exercise it, even though the issue is in my shoulder. So we're having a lot of these people just sitting around who have a wealth of wisdom and can add value to people, because there's something that you don't want to do, if somebody's willing to do it, but because we don't care about old people, right? And I think that, tying it with scripture, because I think some of these people, the issue is they ain't found it in the Bible. They issue. They haven't found it. So so they're justifying their behaviors because the Bible didn't correct them yet. Well, in the book of James, 2 James and 2, it talks about partiality, the sin of partiality. Partiality is a real sin. It's in my opinion, it's the most common sin that we practice. But we only want to address the sin that is obvious and that's open and that we can see. But all of us have favorites sometimes. Even in the home, favorite kids, on the workplace, they have favorite employees. So we click up and attack the people we don't like, whatever the case may be. This happens in the church too. We're partial. We place some people higher and some people lower, and it's a sin. We leave people behind and we disregard and ignore them, ignore their issues that are very clear. I mean, they're very clear and that's my thing. These issues are very clear. We can see the issue. We can see these people that are not being assisted, but because we don't care about them and we're using the scripture to justify why we shouldn't, extend grace to them, and utilize them is the issue is, I believe, the heart issue, because I think we addressed the natural issue. And now we got to address what's going to push people to actually engage in these processes and go forward and move forward and walk forward. Is we have a heart issue. We don't care about certain groups of people. Sorry.
Can I throw up a quick point? Like, so one thing I feel like is just like people tend to, like they were talking about burnout in the comments before. So if someone's been in a position for too long, they tend to, because they don't want to do the work, try to justify not doing the work. So for instance, like they know it's going to take some work to address that group that, that's being neglected. So they try to find scripture instead of doing the work. It's like, well, instead of, or why don't I appoint someone who is fresh that can do that work or has the new vision or pass the baton to the next person that does vision? No one has to die in that position. You know what I'm saying? Like, that's the one thing I feel like the church needs to really grasp, is you don't have to die in that position. You know, you can just pass the baton to someone else who's ready to do that work.
I think it's a toxic loyalty that comes out of, particularly in Chicago. There's such a toxic loyalty that comes out of Chicago, where, especially those of us who are from the streets, you know, you can have one of the guys who he trying to get with your girl. He's stealing from you, and you still and he ready to snitch at any moment. You ready to die for him. Mm-hmm. You get on the stand and you take 20 years for him, right? You know, and now you're removed from your family, or you're removed. So I think it's a toxic loyalty that's from you know, the world that's coming to the church, where we have to be loyal. But I think we can find a balance, though. We can find a balance where we can still be loyal to people and keep them busy and keep them you know, feeling validated and worthy, and still, you know, move forward in building and moving forward with the generations. You know, I think we can find a balance in that. And when people just don't want to, you know, get with the program, we got to find something else for that too, you know.
So use the word validation, and I feel like we can use that to transition into the personal side of church hurt, where, you know, a lot of people feel hurt because of lack of validation of their feelings, lack of validation of their thought processes. So, like, can you guys expand on that a little bit?
Wow, that's so loaded. But what I will say is, you got to have willing participants on both sides of the fence, right? You've got to have leadership. I'm not going to say leader, but you have to have leadership that is not only open to hearing new ideas, but also encourages it. So that's first. But then you also have to have well-managed expectations, because you can present me with 55 ideas, but you don't get to stand around and watch and see which one I'm going to implement.
That's good.
Going back to like these imbalanced expectations that people have, you are not rejected if I didn't add purple chairs to the last row of the sanctuary. You are not heard of. You're not devalued because your idea wasn't utilized. So I think one of the issues that we don't talk about enough is the role that identity plays in all of this, in structure of the church. There are some people who what they do in the house of God is the sole makeup for their entire identity. It is everything to them. And so a blow, like a no to me about an idea I had, is going to impact or land very differently on a person who is counting on this particular level of validation. And a lot of times when you see that, these are people who don't control anything else in their life, or they've got failed relationships. Not saying that they're terrible people, but they just don't have many successes in life. So church is the only place that you can be somebody great without training. Church is the only place that you can be platformed quickly without credentials. And so church, traditional church settings have made, it's been really deceptive around what it takes to be qualified to be a decision maker, so to speak. So I think that's where a lot of the letdown comes from, because we see validation. We say God loves you, God accepts you just as you are. And sometimes that spills over into our expectations of God's people. If God accepts me the way I am, if God is going to use me exactly how I am, no matter my past and my background, then why haven't you put me in a position? Why can't I join that team? Why can't I join the worship team? I know I'm going through a deliverance process, but put me on that stage and let me work my way through my deliverance process, right? Because there have not been clear guidelines set around God accepting you as you are versus the process before you can be used in a visible space. I think the other part of it too is my mom started off at Liberty Temple cleaning toilets, right? People know my parents' testimony. Is not to say that they weren't delivered enough by the time they came to Liberty. But if I got a servant's heart and I just want to serve in the house of the Lord, I don't really care what you have me do. Versus depending on how I see myself and what I think I am, I need to be validated by your accepting of my ideas and you accepting, give me a voice in an important space, or I don't feel validated by you.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of times that's the misnomer. And a lot of times that tipped the scale to something we haven't talked about. Maybe it's for another discussion, but y'all members hurt leaders all the time. Well, we don't talk about that nearly enough, and the night is already far spent. So I won't really go down that road. But there is
no, you can go there. You can go there.
Equal disdain, disrespect, disregard. Here's the thing: the person who is disrespected and hurt the most in leadership is the person who is idolized the most. And that sounds oxymoronic, but let me break it down to you. When you idolize somebody, you have absolved them of the right to be a human being. You have absolutely faded to black any aspect of their humanity. And so now they can't make a mistake. They can't get angry. They can't have a moment of humanality and a moment of flesh in the pulpit and say hell or damn without there being all kind of side group chats about whether or not they're fit to lead and maybe they need a sabbatical. When whole time they've been lied on, people have talked about them like crazy. You don't know, thinking about how church is a business, you don't know the stress of a leader. So you got people who are sitting in leadership positions that don't tithe. So how are the lights going to get, you know what I'm saying? So I think when we idolize people, when we put them on these pedestals, we strip them of the right to be human. And when you can't see a person's humanity, you don't give them the opportunity to heal or to take a moment. Some people would step aside and take a moment, but they're scared. If I take a break, I'm gonna come back to a scattered church because everybody want to be the boss. You know what I'm saying? So it's so much of that hurt that goes both ways. And I get it. As a leader, you got to be able to carry more. You got to be able to withstand it. You shouldn't be crumbling and in a corner rocking, sucking your thumb now, because you are the leader. I hope you get that. But we have not given leaders the grace to just be people. To just be people. And you have no idea how many leaders are bleeding and crying, going to bed every single night, just because they got people who look to them almost in the place of God. And we think that's bestowing great honor on them. There's no more pressure on a person than a person who is idolized and not seen as a human being first. So that hurt thing, that goes both ways. Your leaders are absolutely hurt too. The gossip gets back to them. The backbiting gets back to them. All of the decisions you think that they're making, all that gets back to them. So I think both sides is my point.
And
Do you have a microphone over there, T? Because you could just drop it right there. I mean, just saying, like you just.
I don't. I just want to extend grace in both directions. We don't do that enough.
We don't.
Back to what Teresa was talking about with all of the ideas, and I think that this generation, what the issue they have with our generation is that we have so much ideas, but we're unwilling to be consistent in our work ethic to help build. So they have to rely on the leadership that they have. So I think that, when we get ourselves, because we have to hold ourselves accountable for being inconsistent when we're needed, and when we have these ideas, that we are also a part of the building process, and that we don't just throw ideas out there and then get upset when they're not implemented, when you refuse to help. There's always something going on when you're called to assist. So I think we also have an accountability for us. I think it's time now that we make a choice, that we're going to help build this thing. And we're going to be a part of this rebuilding or this moving forward, and not drop the ball on, when we are required to do something. I think that's also where that's what I know for me, speaking with those in leadership, that's a huge issue that they have with our generation, is that we're not consistent, we're not dedicated, we don't, and really we're not. That's because we really don't believe in the vision. Because the thing about our generation, when we believe, we work. And I think that Apostle Stephen's church is an example of him able to get, you know, millennials to work. Mm-hmm. Why? Because they believe in the vision, you know. So I think that once we get our, you know, get consistent in our work ethic, and we will be able to move forward together, because we can't really do it without them, and they can't do it without us, you know. So I think it's time. It's just time.
One thing I'm noticing is that there's a common thread through a lot of these issues that we have, and it's maturity. So like, for instance, like I got a chance to talk to a couple CEOs, and he was like, they put a age restriction on certain positions. And it's because there's a level of maturity that is expected of that person that's going to be going into that position. So I'm like, unfortunately, in the kingdom, we can't see ages or maturity levels of people right away. Like you have to kind of be around a person or watch this person for a certain season to see where the maturity level. Mm-hmm. But that's the due diligence that a lot of people are unwilling to do before we get in putting people in these leadership positions, which causes them to hurt people because they don't have the maturity level to lead these people in these levels.
So that's just as a consultant in corporate America, I teach organizations, especially smaller organizations where you don't necessarily have promotion opportunities for everybody, right? But every organization, and the church is an organization, every organization should have a leader track. Mm-hmm. Period. What that means is I'm building my bench. That's one thing that we have not done successfully in church space is build a bench. I'm going to expose you to the things that you'll need to be exposed to so that when the time comes, because somebody said it earlier, a lot of what we see is just, we don't use what we got at the end of the day. To Tony's point, that is a chief concern that, you know, younger folks are brilliant. They're energetic. They got the legs, but they're inconsistent. They don't show up when it's time. So again, this all goes back to vision. What is the vision? That is something I think everybody should know. Maybe not the particulars, but what direction are we even going in to help us chart in that direction? It's a long time ago. We should have done away with the either or. This hasn't been an either or conversation in decades. This is both and. Mm-hmm. Absolutely both and. I saw a meme today actually that blew my mind. And it said, if you are older than 45 and you're not being mentored by a person under 30, that you are not setting yourself up for sustainability. I had to go back and read that again. I'm like, maybe there's a typo. But if you are over 45 and you don't have a mentor or access to someone with knowledge in your field that's under 30, and this is that conversation about, I need that sage wisdom, but I need young energy too. I need the combination of two. It's not going to work one way or the other. Even when people talk about all nations, and the assumption is that all nations is 95% millennial. That is not true at all. Not true at all. What you see is millennial energy driving the ship. But that church, it is a balance. We've got seniors that we honor. We've got 50-somethings, 40-something, 30. So we've got representation in every single bucket. What you see out in front in terms of the energy, when you see the marketing and the graphics and all of that, that may be the millennial energy, that millennial space, that Gen Z space, because that is the time that we're in right now. But it is all of those different decades and representation working together to make a thing work. Because what will happen is if you base a movement around what's popping right now, it's not going to be popping in 15 years.
Nope.
Right.
We're talking about sustainability, longevity, having a reach, viability, being relevant, right? And not pigeonholing ourselves into one place or the other. We need it all.
Can we put that question back up there, Amina? Does the vision need to be updated as seasons change? We kind of touched on it earlier, but you guys want to answer that question from the awesome Robin De Silva, who is our guest?
That's a great question. I'm going to answer this like I answer for my clients, and it's a little different in church space in my mind. I think the vision for a ministry was and is and always has been the vision. I think cultures change.
Mm-hmm.
I think execution of vision changes. But the vision for a house, I don't see evidence. And again, I haven't been in church space enough or in church administration, but I don't see the vision. I think the direction or the way we get stuff done, I can see that changing frequently over time as time changes. And again, culture. You are absolutely going to experience culture shifts because culture is highly dependent on what's happening right now, what's meaningful right now. But in terms of the vision, and I think a lot of times people mistake vision for goals. You're going to have many goals throughout the lifespan of a church, but you're not going to have that. If you're changing visions that much, then it probably wasn't a vision. It probably was more of a goal.
Tony, you want to touch on it?
That was good. I mean, I think as far as like I say vision, I think the vision changes because we get that from the scriptures, right? I don't know. I mean, we get that. We should get like that. Yeah, as far as the heart of the vision, but I think that like she said, like the way we execute the vision changes. It should change with the times and who we use. I mean, she answered the question. I really don't have anything to add to that.
So I see it as like, have you guys watched this series on Disney Plus about like Walt Disney and his vision for Disney World, where he was only able to carry that vision out so far, and then the other leaders of those that took over the company stayed in that vision, but like covered another area of that vision. So it's like the vision doesn't need to change, but maybe the attack, like the plan of attack, like Teresa said. Gotcha. But yeah, it may be the plan of attack of that vision. You know what I'm saying? Like maybe someone's, you're gifted and called to attack the head of the top of that vision.
Yeah.
Then someone else is like called to hit the left side of that vision. And that's one thing we have to realize in church is like one person can't do everything. And that does, like we said, the ball gets dropped when everyone's trying to do everything. Right. You know what I'm saying? So it's like, I feel like if everyone just, I don't know if it's like a humbling thing, but like, because like it's like Teresa said, it's a two-way street where people expect one person to do everything, but then that leader also expects to do everything.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think where we just expect the leaders to do specific things, and I'm talking leaders, so a leader group, is because they're of a certain generation in a lot of cases, but we as the church, we're not split between those generations, so when we're in the four walls of the church, or just as the church in general, we're not just the baby boomers, we're not Gen Z, we're not millennials, we are the church. So we're literally one generation, and when you're no longer part of that generation, that's when you die, go to heaven. So we're all one group of people, and we should all have the same goals, and everybody within whatever organization you're in should be all hands on deck. That doesn't happen all the time or most times, but that's the way it should be.
I agree. Let's throw this out real quick. If you guys have a question that you want answered, feel free to type it in the comments and we'll try to get to it within the next 10 minutes because we are over time. So if you got a question, type it in now and we will let this esteemed panel, answer your question. No, that's not a question. Brian trying to preach in the comments, and we on
the devil. Yeah, no, Brian, that's real though, because I think fear has been a major issue in moving forward. That those who have built the house are afraid that who we pass it to is going to tear it down because of what we believe, what we stand for. It's fear. So I think that fear is, in the end, if you stay afraid, the building is going to fall anyway. So you might as well get active now because that fear is causing you to not build. I mean, right. Basic, that fear is causing you to not really be inclusive in bring change, because change is inevitable whether we want it to happen or not. Time doesn't wait.
I think too, the conversation about some of it is how we present change. You know what I mean? So a lot of times, younger people have and I'm going to say we, so I'm only 41. Hello. Younger people have a very Trump approach to change. Like, we want to repeal without replacing. So let's just say the old way of doing things is dated. That's old. That graphic looks whack. A semicolon, not a period. What about this? This is my offering. What do you think about this? I think we can do it a little bit better. But oftentimes we're dogging what is happening now. We don't have any salient solutions. We just don't. We're against what's happening. So I think presentation is a part of it too.
All right, let's go to Eugenia's question. What should one do if they're legitimately hurt?
I want to stop on the word legitimately first, because whether or not you agree that I was hurt doesn't mean that I wasn't hurt. So that's first. So I think I'm going to use the term legitimate there to mean, what do I do if I'm really hurt? And again, I think that church should have a structure in place. And I know we don't like to do this because it is going to get abused at some point. I'm not talking about a drop your hurt in the box. I'm not talking about that. But there should be a known protocol in place for people to address issues that they have, specifically with leadership. Now, if this is your co-laborer in Christ that sits next to you, that's a conversation. You treat that like you treat that out in the streets. Just have an adult conversation. And see, but it has to start with some sort of conversation. But if this is cyclical, if this is something that's reoccurring, that continues to happen, that needs to be presented to leadership, in my opinion. Then depending on how leadership addresses it, determines your next step. But the very first step is always going to be communication. I would say give people the benefit of the doubt that you would like if they were hurt by you.
That's Bible though, because the Bible tells us that when we have an offense and the brother doesn't want to hear it, and we go grab the elders.
Yep.
If once we go to our brother, because it's the process that the scriptures talk about, we go to our brother.
Yep.
Once that don't work, we go to the elders. So but that process has to be clear, because I promise you, it'll stop a lot of the abuse.
Yes.
If the leaders let it be known to everybody that this process is in place. And now, check this out, because I don't think people understand because we got these people who talking about law this and grace that, but check this out. Law is for the lawless. Law was meant to curb behavior. It was never the cure. Christ was the cure. Law was meant to curb behavior. So the reason why I ain't robbed the bank yet, because I'm gonna go to jail, not because I don't want to, right? So that's why we have law, because we have to curb behavior. And the issue we have now today in the world, we need law to curb some of this behavior. Because people are afraid of that punishment. So this is why law and organizations have to be made clear to curb behavior. And I promise you, it's going to stop a lot of this abuse and even dollar pettiness, or whatever the case may be, because people don't want to lose their positions. They don't want to lose, what? They gifted. Yeah, they are graced for it. But this little area, they need to be known that, if you keep doing this, so we need law. We need law.
I think that's important too. And I would even say this is the step or the protocol or my advice. If this is, kind of your first time in the church situation, I know several people who you are hurt every church you go to. So then my advice to you is it's time for some soul search. It's time to really take a look at you mean to tell me that everybody is against you? Not making light again of the fact that you've been hurt, but there's very likely some areas that you need to take a look at within yourself. If you've experienced this, not just multiple times in the same space, but if your church experience, you are 2 to 3 churches in and you've been hurt at all the churches, before you step away from God, find a way, maybe find somebody to disciple you through some processes, because the problem is probably you. And that's okay.
Yeah, might need therapy.
Yeah.
Therapy is okay.
Absolutely.
It is okay. All right, let's get to the next question. How important is it that how is it important that a church organization realize the need to repent to the people that they have offended or hurt?
Ooh. Ooh.
I think you can say sorry, but the scriptures talk about evidence, right? So, you know, we're just saying sorry or showing, you know, a contrite heart. It's not really love, because love is action. Once we start to put these things, once we start to implement these processes, now we're really showing we're sorry. We don't want this to happen ever again, you know. So, or we're trying to at least minimize, you know, this suffering. So that's the biggest sorrow we can ever have, is change behavior. Not you standing over the pulpit telling everybody I'm sorry, or you going to them, hey, I'm sorry. This is what I'm going to do moving forward to prevent this from happening, you know, to anyone else, you know, or to at least minimize it. You know, implement these processes to deal with the issue.
I agree with that, and I would say too, the platform or the forum for the acknowledgement or the apology is going to depend, or should depend, on the hurt. For example, if one individual was really done wrong, then that's not something that's going to be addressed over the pulpit, and it probably is not an apology that's going to come from the senior leader if it's one person. But where we start talking about apologies for systems that have hurt people, I do think an open address is incredibly important. And I think the larger your following, the larger your sphere of influence, the larger the platform of your apology needs to be. And to Tony's point, it's not just about apologies, it's a commitment to change behavior. And the reason I say commitment to change behavior is because, going back to that truth and explanation thing, there are people all the time who will come in and report certain behaviors of an employee, and you have my commitment, especially if I haven't broken your trust, you have my commitment that I'm going to deal with it. But I'm not about to tell you that I'm suspending his pay, and I'm not going to give you
the punishment.
Right. Now, I think depending on how far trust has been broken by the person who is offering the apology or the acknowledgement, I think you may have to give a little bit more detail there if your people just don't trust you. I think you have to go into more detail, and I won't call anybody's name, but we've seen even recently, you know, men of God with larger platforms, depending on the size of the mess up or the visibility of it, you give a little bit more details to your commitment to change behavior. But it's absolutely important. Again, we can't say on one hand, give me space to be human, and then not do a very human thing like apologize.
Can I ask a piggyback question to this? How often should a church or organization look into their systems to make sure they're not catering to the hurt or catering to toxic behavior?
At least annually. At least annually. And then as often as something keeps popping up. Again.
Yep. I was about to say that, yeah.
You get one report about Sister Brown, not so big of a deal. Get 3 reports about Sister Brown. Now gonna take a look. But when the person who don't never complain about nothing is complaining about Sister Brown, we need to have a conversation with Sister Brown.
Right.
At least annually, you need to be making a full assessment of every system in your organization. Every system, down from how you pay your bills to what your reserves look like, to how we greet people when they come in, to how we deal with people who are on the sick and shut in. Everything that communicates God from your organization needs to be evaluated on at least an annual basis, once a year.
I totally agree. Next question, please. What does building the bench look like in today's ministry?
Training. But before we even get to training, I would say exposure. Just like in the corporate or in the marketplace, especially me, that was one of my strengths when I was in corporate America, is I can spot talent a mile away. I can spot talent in an interview. I can be interviewing a person for an entry-level position, and the way they're answering questions, and part of it was discernment too. I know that, but I'm like, oh yeah, in 6 months. And so if we've got the right people in the right places with the right skill set, character, and experience, making these, and I mean spiritual experience too, making these decisions in church space, then you are absolutely identifying your leaders long before there is a leadership role for them to fill. So I would say one of the things I valued a lot about Liberty is the training. When we first got to Liberty Temple, there were classes everywhere, classes on top of classes on top of classes. So again, always preparing for the future you believe you're going to have. So I would say exposure, like without a title, without making any promises or guarantee, like getting people away from the need for a title. Understanding is that titles are for other people. They're not for you. They're not for your gift. They're so that people can identify who the leadership is in the house. And so if we approach titles like that, people will do more even without a title. Hey, I'm going to this meeting tomorrow. You want to tag along, or do you want to sit in on this particular meeting? Not to say anything, but just start to expose people who you discern have greater capacity for more. Expose them to what that next level would look like even before that next level is available to them.
Good right there.
Yeah, that was definitely a system that was like when I worked for the Walmart Corporation, like as soon as you made known that you wanted to go down this path, they started exposing you to certain things that put you on the path, or even training. So it's like, hey, you need to take this module, you need to do this module, you need to do this. And it's like that prepares you for the path that you wanted to go to. Yeah. But if they felt like you wasn't suited for that path, they'd be like, you got to do a little more work. You know, you got to.
I love that. And that's why I stress leader track and evaluations. I think that people don't do evaluations for volunteer positions. And I think that's a terrible flaw. I don't think that people should be passed over for an opportunity to serve in a greater capacity before you're having the conversation. Well, this is why we went with them. I don't think that should ever be the case. I think if someone is serving in the house of the Lord, whoever they are reporting to, even if it is a survey, a 5-question survey, they should be getting feedback on how they're serving and what their contribution is to the house of God. Because again, people could be thinking for years that they're killing it. They're killing the game, and they're really not.
Trash, son. You trash.
Hear a lot how we as leaders are absorbing, or how the ministry is absorbing their contribution to leadership. And that makes conversations down the line a lot easier. And again, it builds your bench. But if you've got discernment, you already know, you're identifying as the Spirit of God is already highlighting or casting a light. Somebody is standing out a little bit more than the rest. And I just say you need to start exposing them to more before that opportunity is available.
And then it's also on the maturity of the leader to not worry about what other people is going to perceive you exposing these people, you know? So it's like, oh man, if I show this person this, people are going to think I'm giving them favoritism. And now I don't think I should do that.
Yes, some of that you can't manage. Some of that you can't manage. And that's why if it's a culture of development and a culture of growth, then you'll have less of that side eye. When people, and here's the thing, that's why I say have a leader track no matter how small your organization is. And here's why. Everybody can take the same leader track. That doesn't mean that everybody's going to make it. So, you know, depending on where you are in the growth and development of your ministry or of your organization, that's going to determine what size exposure is. But at the same time, again, you're not always going to have to give explanations to folks. It's not all right.
Is there, we have another question?
Yeah.
What advice would you give? Sam, go ahead and read this.
This is a long one. Got on my glasses for this. What advice would you smart? What advice would you give to people who have an unhealthy attachment to their long-standing church title or lack of a title, which may lead to perceived church hurt if they are overlooked or asked to transition out? It's a long one. So let's do it in pieces. So let's what advice would you give to people who have an unhealthy attachment to their long-standing title?
This is the Lord's work.
Yeah.
What I would say is that it is the leaders or whoever is bestowing the title or the promotion upon that individual to stress that until the cows come home. This is the Lord's work. This is the Lord's church. This is the Lord's title. Now, that conversation has not been had. That distinction was not made early on. And now you have a person in this situation. My advice to them is remember that this is the Lord's work. Yeah. It is not yours. And you are performing or you are contributing to that church from a place of your identity, but not for your identity.
Right.
So
I was going to say doctrine. Yeah. doctrine, that the way you deliver the doctrine would give them that rest or that peace, you know, with that transition, you know, that who they have to be reminded who they belong to. Because if you're putting, you know, your identity into a position or anything, you know, eventually you're setting yourself up for loss. You know, so that's where, you know, that's where like she said, the leader who put them in that position have to reinforce their identity in Christ, you know, and remind them of who they are.
Yeah. And for the person who feels like they're being overlooked, I would suggest that you check your motives first, because again, the title is so that people can identify you as a leader in the house. It has nothing to do with the work you're doing. I would challenge you to just serve. And then if it's really bothering you, I don't think there's anything wrong with talking to leadership, but the approach is not, why haven't I been promoted? The approach is, how else can I serve? Sometimes you will be surprised how many leaders don't even know that you're open for more. They may know, you know, you got 2 jobs, a cat, a paper route, and 6 kids. In their mind, they don't want to overwhelm you. So sometimes we can't make our leaders go in the spirit for stuff that we can just talk to them about. So, you know, if you feel that you've outgrown your current role, or it just really is your heart's desire, God, I want to do more for you. Not I want more visibility, not I want more platform, because that's attached to title. So I always have a problem with promotion hinging on a title alone. But if in your heart you feel like the ministry is not getting all they could get out of me, there's more for me to do, talk to your leader from the approach, hey, I don't know if you know, but I'm also good at XYZ. How else can I serve?
Yeah, I know from my experience, that was an issue I had, because I'm introverted. Not to mention, you're trained, you know, we were trained, don't speak unless you've been spoken to, don't bother the leader, you know, don't, you know, so you have all of these cultural things you're fighting, and now you're left in the dark, like, wow, I have so much to offer. They don't see it, you know, so, you know, now the people who speak up and aren't graced get this this permission when you were supposed to be there and you didn't speak up. So open your mouth. I promise you'll be surprised how much they're willing to listen to you.
And
you know?
I can attest to the other side. I'm sorry, go ahead.
They've been looking at you. They see you. Like Teresa said, they don't want to overwhelm you. They see you got so much going on.
Yep.
You know, they think they're looking out, you know.
But no, I can attest to the speaking up going the opposite way too, because like before I became media director, it started out as, hey, have you thought of doing this? Or, you know, have you tried this? Like, and like they'd be like, oh, so you know this. Like here, take this whole bus. Make it better. So let's get to the second part of that question. What is it? Which may lead to perceived church hurt if they are overlooked or asked to transition out. So yeah, so that was my question. How do you transition someone how do you transition them out? That is in a voluntary position.
Thank you so much for your service. Take your rest. It's really not that hard, right? So where people are not receiving a paycheck, there's no impact to familial income or benefits and all of that. Thank you so much for your service, depending on how long they've done it, especially if it's just time for them to leave and they haven't made a spectacle of themselves or dragged the church down. If this is a person who served well, I would throw them a party, you know, public announcement, stand up, sister so-and-so, bring them to the front. We want to thank you so much. Pray over them, release the word of the Lord into their life, and send them well into their future.
I'm a little cash too, you know.
Listen, I think if it is simply we're going in a different direction, or you know, it's just time for something different. Number one, they should be the first to know. I've seen that mistake happen also, where people hear by the water fountain that, you know, they're being phased out. They should be the first to know. Once that decision is made, have a conversation with them. If they've served in many years and they put blood, sweat, and tears into that role, this is, even if they're not being paid, this is going to sting a little bit, or it may have some kind of effect. Give them an opportunity in private, you know, to deal with that and ask their questions. But then I would publicly praise them for their service and send them off well into their next. Even if they're still going to be a part of the ministry, I would still extend the highest honor to them on their way out. And then also ask them, again, unless it's something toxic or they're just outdated, but would you mind helping us to mentor the next person? Nothing extends a person's value than asking them what they think or being able to pick their wisdom, especially if they are a more seasoned individual. So I would find the most honorable way to thank them for what they've done and allow them to pour, even if it's for a little bit, into the person who's going to take their role. And that's free. That don't cost nothing.
Okay, but how do you address people that have built their life upon serving in that position? For instance, you have an elderly saint that has ushered for all these years, and that's the reason why they get up and go to church, is because they love serving in that position. How do you transition someone like that out?
Again, you can make them an usher advisor or something like that. I don't know, but I feel like that is a critical danger that not just churches, but organizations across the board make, is that we don't know when to kiss and say goodbye. So if she ain't bothering nobody, standing by her little door and doing her stuff, and she's been doing it for 60 years, then let her stand by the door, leave her alone. But if it's starting to cause an issue, like maybe her mobility, or maybe she's getting a little snappy in her old age, if it's starting to cause an issue for the organization, you can help her adjust, make her honorary, make her an advisor. But when it's time to move people out of places, we have to move them out of place. And that's why I'm saying, don't do it abruptly. Maybe for a person like that, you do it over a period of time. I'm not saying lie or be deceptive, but again, inflate this exodus. Oh, you know what? It's time for you to move on, but you got so much wisdom. Can we start there's ways to do it so that people leave positions with dignity, but you cannot keep a person who is negatively impacting the organization or not benefiting the organization in a role just because they've always done it.
Oh man, I fired my grandma so many times because she called me fat too many times. I'm like, look, grandma, you can't be, you fired. And she was like, you can't fire me. I'm like, you right. But outside of this church, you fired.
I think when we go away from the servant's mindset, so our title is just servant. So, in everything we do in the kingdom, it's about service, service to God and service to others. It's no longer about us. I'm Samuel Anthony, but when I'm in the kingdom, I'm a servant. I'm like anybody else. I can wash toilets, I can catch on the altar, I can pray for people, whatever I'm supposed to be doing for God in that moment, I do it.
Right, and it's not just on Sundays. I hope it's not just on Sundays, because I know for me, I put my, all of that on when I come into the church and what I do in the church, because Monday through, Saturday, there's so much more service that we can do for one another outside of, the jobs or the titles that we've been given, to work in the house. That it's when you come out of that position, you are still serving Christ in many ways. I promise you, he got stuff for you to do. Trust me.
It's never done.
Never done. Look.
But man, this has been an awesome conversation, and I'm pretty sure there's so much more we can talk about, because we only scratched the surface. Man, we are literally doubling our list with part twos. Like every time, it's like, man, we can go into this. All right, we're gonna do a part two of it. But we want to thank Antonio Perez and Pastor Teresa Allison for gracing us with their knowledge and their presence, and just being awesome human beings. We're ending because we don't have any more questions. So with that being said, thank you. Just hang around backstage, guys, and we'll be right with you. Wow. So yeah, I could just
this was great.
I'm full. And the editing of the recaps are going to be so hard because all these answers were just so full of knowledge.
Yeah. We'll get a couple though. They'll be good.
It will. And you got this knowledge for free. We just gave you so many keys, for free. So I know you're thinking to yourself, how can I show my appreciation for this show? And there is two ways you can do it. First one is we have advertising opportunities available. So you can, buy advertising spots, and we will advertise your product in our spaces behind us because we have spaces. We'll talk about it. And if you want to know more about those packages, email libertynet@yahoo.com and you'll get all the information about that. But the quickest way you can show your appreciation for all of this knowledge that's been dropped on you tonight is to buy your merch. Yes, sir. We got merch. Ooh, baby, we got merch.
We got merch. Merch that we got merch. Yes, I merch it. We got merch.
So go buy your t-shirts, your hoodies, your like we said, stockings, your holiness cloths, your breath spray. We got LIN live breath spray.
We sell an anointed oil, the little water that you can get. We got all that.
We got Q-tips. We got dental floss. We got everything. If we can put our name on it, we got. No, I'm sorry. But no, seriously, get your t-shirt, get your hoodies. The hoodies are super comfortable, super plush, and the weather has changed. It was just hot yesterday, and now it's cold. Well, we can't say that for our Florida people and our California people. You get all the good weather, and we hate you. Just kidding.
It's out of love, though.
It's all out of love. We lovingly hate you all for having good weather all around. So with that being said, I am Alfonso Spanky Jones. Oh, and we have announcements. I'm sorry.
Announcements. Amina, don't kill us.
I heard her voice in my head, and I was like, "Oh God, Amina's gonna throw daggers." We are in the midst of our Apostolic Summit.
Yes.
This weekend we had our first service right before here with Apostle Ashley Estrada, and it was a powerful, powerful sermon until his internet went out.
Yep.
But on Tuesday we have Apostle Alexander Pagani.
Yes.
At 7 p.m. and he's going to bring that hot fire.
The Puerto Rican apostle. This dude is on point. He has so much wisdom, and like a lot of the people that we see who are here in the network, they're people you want to listen to. You want to hear what they have to say. So tune in for that.
And then look at his beard. He got a Samson beard too. Like there's power in that beard.
Hopefully he tells the story about his beard.
He probably will. He does that really well. And then at 8 p.m. after that service will be a special broadcast where we celebrate the life of our founder and chief apostle, Clifford E. Turner, for CET Day. That'll be happening all day Tuesday, but we were just pointing out these two things because these are things you don't want to miss. Yeah. There will be special videos, special announcements, giveaways, so much good things that's going to be happening on that day. So you don't want to miss it
at all.
I think that's it, right?
Is that it? Is that the last one?
Nothing popped up. We are good. Yay.
We made it.
So with that being said, I am Alfonso Spanky Jones. That is
Samuel Sam Anthony.
Samuel. We love you. We love you. And y'all, we'll see y'all next week.
Buy y'all merch. Peace.
Buy your merch. Hold on, wait. Okay, there we go.
It's LIN live with Spank and Sam. It's a show for everyone, boy, woman, girl, and